And we welcome you into the Sporting News Studios. I'm Tom Vandervoort with Chief of Correspondence, Bob Hille. We're talking about the Hall of Fame. One guy in the Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame this year, Barry Larkin, shortstop. Did your vote count this year?
My vote did count, as did the other two voters from Sporting News. A year where there weren't a lot of good first-year guys. A few holdovers. Barry Larkin's a guy who benefits, I think.
Feels like a slam dunk this time around. What makes Barry Larkin a shoe-in Hall of Famer?
Well, I think a lot of times we forget about Barry Larkin. He was kind of caught in an era where Cal Ripken was going out, and then you had A-Rod and Derek Jeter and those guys coming in. But he's a guy who played great defense for a big man especially, a guy who kind of redefined what the position meant. So pretty good power, good average, almost a .300 career hitter. So a guy that really kind of over the course of almost 20 years in the league made a Hall of Fame career of himself.
All right, so if you grew up watching like a Mark Belanger, Barry Larkin was a guy who helped to change that position like a Cal Ripken.
Exactly true. You know, you think of Cal Ripken, great big tall guy. Barry Larkin's another guy who came in much bigger than what you expect from the Ozzie Smiths of the world. So he kind of redefined what the position meant.
Now, is there anybody on your ballot that you feel sort of, I don't know, say outraged, but were you frustrated at all by some of the guys who didn't get in?
What I always say is the only thing missing from Alan Trammell's resume is a backflip. His numbers across the board are as good as Ozzie Smith's. It's just that he wasn't as dynamic as Ozzie.
Right.
So he's a guy who kind of hangs around, probably isn't going to make it in, so that's going to be a problem.
11 years on the ballot?
Yeah, it's 11 years, so the time's running out on him, so it's going to be a struggle for him, I think.
How about a former teammate of Trammell, Jack Morris?
Well, Jack Morris is a guy that a lot of people don't realize, winningest pitcher in the 1980s. So that alone should get you a lot of consideration, but he just doesn't seem to get it because his ERA was almost 4. And I think people look at that era, don't see a lot of runs being scored, and think in terms of, gosh, he gave up a lot of runs, even though, you know, World Championship teams, one of the great World Series performances of all time. So it's a struggle for him.
Yeah, I feel like this is a guy front of the rotation ace on 4 World Championship teams, 3 different organizations, did go out there and pitch in a lot of big baseball games. Are voters too hung up on the numbers these days? I mean, is it too hard to get in the Hall of Fame?
We've talked about this. You know, at the very essence, it's a great honor to be in the Hall of Fame, but on the other hand, it's also kind of an amusement park. We want to celebrate the game. If we make it so hard to get in, then a lot of times we're keeping people out that fans want to come and see and reminisce about and recall and have fun with, and all of a sudden we say, gee, Jack Morris, almost a 4.0 ERA, but it's all about wins and losses, and he won for the teams that he pitched for.
Well, if you're talking about memories, the memory isn't the ERA. The memory is those moments in the game. And I submit to you, Jack Morris had a lot of those.
Absolutely true.
Were you tempted at all, Bob, by any of the first-time guys on the ballot?
No, not at all. I mean,
what? No Vinny Castilla, Bob?
No Jeremy Burnett's. I know. It's one
Bernie
of the great,
Williams. He got 10% of the vote.
Bernie
right?
Williams is a guy who people make a defense of his work because, believe it or not, center field is a defensive position more than an offensive position. He did some very good things, but probably benefited a lot from being on some very good teams. So he'll be carried over, but I have a hard time seeing him ever getting into the Hall of Fame.
How about Fred McGriff, Edgar Martinez? What's your take on those?
Well, you know, Edgar Martinez is a guy that gets kind of gonged because the position he played, a DH.
But that is a position.
That's exactly
they
right.
write it down there in the lineup.
We don't say you played at Fenway Park, and so if you're a right-handed hitter and hit a bunch of home runs, we're going to hold that against you. It's just we don't do it that way. So again, we're evolving. Next year we'll be trying to figure out the whole steroid thing because you've got Biggio and Bonds and Clemens and a bunch of other guys that are coming on. So again, this is a year-by-year sorting out process that we have to reinvent every year.
Well, you mentioned steroids, and I'll make that my last question. What's your take? How do you account for that in your voting?
Well, I said in Sporting News that I'm still angry. I still hold it against the players. I hold it against the media. I hold it against the clean players because they let guys get away with something that they knew was going on.
Right.
So as you look at this, your thinking is probably going to evolve. It's still too fresh for me to really just kind of give a pass to the steroid users, the guys that we definitively know use or were named in the Dowd report or those sorts of things. It's hard to let them go yet.
Yeah, and it's going to be hard next year when you're talking about 2 huge names in Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens.
And Sammy Sosa.
And Sammy Sosa. That's when we're really going to get talking about that issue. Bob Hille, thank you very much. I'm Tom Vandervoort. We'll see you next time from right here in the Sporting News Studios.